I'm Amy Feldman, a senior editor at Forbes, and I'm here today with Surbhi Sarna, founder and CEO of Collate, a San Francisco startup that uses AI to automate the paperwork required for life sciences companies. Welcome, Surbhi.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for having me. So nice to be here.
It's delightful to have you here. So Collate is one of 25 companies that made this year's Forbes Next Billion-Dollar Startups list, which came out earlier in the week. And that's interesting for a lot of reasons, not least of which you just came out of stealth in January. So can you tell me a bit about the sort of 6 months of what must have been just quite a whirlwind?
Yeah, it's been an incredible year, and certainly the last 6 months have been more fun and, of course, more work than I could have imagined beforehand. But it's I don't know if there's ever been a better time to build, at least during my adulthood. I imagine when the internet first came onto the scene, this is how it felt. And so I think there are so many factors, both internal to my own personal journey, professional journey, that have made the last 6 months incredible, combined with what it's like to be building an AI company and solving a real need for customers that, at the end of the day are trying to get new products out for patients. It's quite the thrill.
That's cool. Take me back to the beginning. Why did you decide to start it? What was the sort of aha moment where you're like, I need to start Collate right now?
I was at Y Combinator, and before Y Combinator, I had done a life science company working on early detection of ovarian cancer, and then joined YC as their first general partner dedicated to the life sciences and software solutions for the healthcare industry. And I was really enjoying that. I mean, it's a being at YC is a wonderful experience, and being able to pay it forward and work with other founders that are looking to make impact in the space. Uh, but when I saw the ability of LLMs, and I equated that to the paperwork that I was buried under, I just felt like someone who has taken a product all the way from the back of a paper napkin to commercial readiness should start a company like this, that can help with the full product development life cycle, where I think a lot of folks that are working on documentation, their backgrounds come from a very specific part of the journey versus looking at the whole thing holistically. So I did actually attempt to fund or find companies that were doing it first. But then, I've never been an entrepreneur for the sake of being an entrepreneur or a founder. The idea has always occurred to me first, and then I've always felt so compelled that I then started the company. And that's what happened in this case. I stopped being able to sleep at night. I picked up coding again, and then it was just an eventuality that was going to happen.
That's kind of amazing. I mean, and it's interesting because some people are really more entrepreneurs and some people are more VCs. Like some people make that switch and they're like, okay, this is cool. Now I'm just going to invest in companies and find companies. And then some people like you come back and realize this is kind of what they're meant to do.
Yeah, I think it was a really, really hard decision for me, and one that kept me up at night. But then eventually, at the end of the day, after I went through, the checklist and the pros and cons, and you try to be analytical about the decision, and at the end of the day, if you're honest with yourself and what's in your heart and just knowing what's going to make you happy on a day-to-day basis, it was then clear that I needed to get back into it. And I exited my last company at 32, and I think that I just wasn't done. I just hadn't scratched my entrepreneurial itch yet.
Yeah. We've talked previously, but I'm sort of curious to talk more, on this call about this company versus your previous one. I mean, when you started the previous one, you talked before about, having a little difficulty fundraising the first time, but it's all different once you sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how different it is, going back to 2012 and the attitudes like, towards women's health and doing a medical device diagnostic company. Um, I was talking to a VC recently who said, man, you really did your last company on hard mode, right? Because women's health diagnostic, medical device, all of that, versus kind of doing something right now in a hotter space. the difference in fundraising, has been pretty tremendous for me. But I like to think that I keep the scrappiness and the attitude of the first time because the first time I didn't have the validation of VCs that I was on the right track. Uh,
Mhm.
and I let the customers, the physicians, the patients be the validation of what I was working on. And I'm bringing that forward to this company, right? That's where the ultimate validation comes from is what are the aha moments for customers that you are creating? What reaction are you getting from them? So, in a lot of ways, this company is extremely different. This is AI software, a completely different space, very different team makeups, and all of that. But the things that bring me the most joy and sort of my attitude towards how to build this company correctly, those things remain the same.
That's interesting. It's interesting that being in this hot space. I mean, AI has kind of eaten everything just on this list alone. 20 out of 25 companies are in some way AI companies now. How do you think about AI, both in terms of how you use it at Collate and in terms of how you see it changing healthcare and life sciences more broadly?
From my perspective, and of course, I'm bringing a lot of bias into it, but you have to remember that I'm a scientist by training, and all of the other, I will call them fads that came and went and that sort of thing. I never jumped ship to them. They never really changed my view of how the world should function. But in this specific case, I am extremely confident that if someone builds the right product, the healthcare landscape will improve and we'll be able to get medical devices, drugs, diagnostics to market. I know it, I say 5 times faster because 10 times sounds like an exaggeration, but I think it will literally be that. I think that AI is going to enable large companies to do multiple filings in different countries simultaneously. That when new standards come out, AI will be able to adjust your paperwork automatically. I just think that this is kind of what this industry needed. I'm really excited about the impact.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of amazing to think about because the paperwork is mind-boggling in life sciences. Nobody really wants to do it, but if you don't do it, you don't have that life-saving drug or life-saving device, or it all has to happen. And so that is kind of an amazing change.
And the way the paperwork works, there it's all tangled up, cross functions and all of that, right? And so that's where building this whole deterministic platform around different AI workflows is so important, to kind of bring down those silos between functions and that sort of thing. And someone has to be willing to have the patience to build such a big product. But I'm here for it. I would love to dedicate the next 10 years of my career to this.
That's cool. Since you've started, have there been things that have been surprising or unexpected, starting this company, and what have those been?
So, being a life science person through and through myself, I actually thought that I was going to go into this with way more skepticism than I've received so far. I'm not saying that skeptics don't exist. I'm just saying that there are more believers than I thought there were. There are other people, other leaders at large companies, certainly at startups, who see the promise of this, that understand the ROI of it, before I walk into the room. And I think if you're someone that is coming from the life sciences and understands that patient safety is always prioritized over everything else. And sometimes that means purposely adding friction into your software, right? You always talk about frictionless software. That doesn't really work in the life sciences. You need checks and balances everywhere. And they know they're talking to another life science person who is trying to help, who's done the same workflows, who's sat in their seats, who's thought about the same P&L. Um, the attitude is much more open than I thought it would be. I think that's been the most surprising to me.
It's interesting, and I wonder if that's, largely because it's an AI company, and right now the market and consumers also are very open to AI is going to help us and help us with all of these hard things.
Yeah, I think it, and especially if someone has been a power user of AI personally, that has a lot to do with how they might be willing to adopt it professionally, right? So I definitely see that correlation as well.
For other founders who might be watching this, what advice would you give to them, especially other life sciences founders?
All I can say, so I guess your question was directed more towards founders. Maybe if you don't mind, I can address people who are thinking about starting companies right now. The
Absolutely.
water is warm, you've got to get in. It is so fun and rewarding to create entirely new classes of software that didn't exist before, to reimagine problems that our customers are facing in a way that you just simply could not do before. And not to mention the customer facing part of it, but how much your engineering teams are empowered by AI tools, how much senior 10, you take a 10x engineer and you give them all of the right tools, and all of a sudden they're what, a 100x engineer? And we're seeing that at Collate, So all I can say is it is just so fun and so rewarding. And of course, so much work, but then it just doesn't, it's a bit of a cliche, but doesn't quite feel like work when you're having this much fun and seeing this much progress? So I would say take the plunge. There's never been a better time to build.
That's an amazing note to end on. Are there any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I would just say that thank you again so much for the great coverage. I'm extremely grateful for it, and I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity, to build and help folks that are trying to help patients. There's nothing more rewarding.
We're glad to be able to feature you, and thanks for joining us today. And we'll look forward to continuing to follow the company.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, Amy. Wonderful to be here.